Hello, was Forest Focus as Nottingham Forest look to match the mid-90s when they finished third in the Premier League, their current position in the table. Who better to have back on the podcast than a man who loved those days and is no doubt loving these two in massive Reds fan, Matt Forde. Matt, good to have you back with us. How are you?
It's great to be back. I love that no intro as much as I did last time. Man, the graphics, people have got to watch it on YouTube to fully appreciate that. It's brilliant. And it is better than the old theme tune. I'm sure people have come around to it now.
I hope so. I think so. I mean, yeah, I used to get for a ridiculous amount of time people say, I hate this music, I hate this music. Then you get people gradually going, oh, actually, I love this music now. Some people say I listen to it twice, which is mad.
It's more uplifting. It's got, there's something quite soothing about it, actually.
I think so. It's meant to be like, this is a chilled out podcast where we don't go, Arsenal fan TV nuts. It's supposed to represent that. So
Nuno, is your disgrace.
Exactly.
Man. Oh, that's so good to be the antidote to Arsenal fan TV. That is a good and noble aim.
Well, that is the plan. That is the plan. Right. Well, we're doing better than Arsenal at the moment. I mean, are we going to finish above Arsenal? We'll get into all that kind of stuff. I don't know. They're second. Can we catch them? We definitely finish in Champions League.
We could definitely catch Arsenal, yeah. I mean, they also, I do think, Liverpool are obviously just better than them. That's kind of clear to see. But I think there is something in the mindset of Arsenal. I don't think they can handle the pressure. Whereas actually with us, you think of those games where obviously drawing against them at home, beating City at home, I think we are psychologically in a better place than they are. I think the pressure of the fact that City collapsing meant that they thought, well, this was their year, and they didn't really bargain for what Slot was going to do at Liverpool, or even what Forest were going to do and sort of hunt them down for second. Whereas for us, I still think the whole thing's an amazing party, that clearly the management and players are very serious about achieving the very best they can achieve. But I just think, the atmosphere and the attitude around the club and the players, the management, everyone is just so positive. Whereas you look at the interview with Mikel Arteta after the Man United game, it was like a man trying to flee a hostage situation. He was trying to break out of Alcatraz. It was incredible. You think, well, you don't get that with Nuno. I just think he's created an atmosphere around that. It just gives us all so much positivity and strength. So I don't think that we could absolutely catch them.
I was going to ask, the first question would be, can you believe this is happening? But maybe have you got past that, like the 12 stages thing, grief, anger, acceptance? Have you reached acceptance now that we're really good, or are you still a bit stunned by it all?
Well, yeah, there's 5 stages of grief. Alcoholics Anonymous is a 12-step program. So
that's right. So somewhere
in between the two. Let's shake hands on 8. I just think that the bones of this team were obviously there before, and you could see last season that Alanga and Gibbs-White were very talented players, and you could see that Hudson-Odoi was very talented. And I think the main thing really has been Matt Sells, and then on top of that, playing in a way that is a bit more deliberate, where you invite teams on and everyone is really aware of what they have to do, and then a striker that puts away so many of his chances. And I think all those things together, I think Sells, Murillo, Milenkovic is crucial. And then so many of those players we already had. And you could see, last season, we all knew Murillo was great last season. And you think, had we not started the season with Matt Taylor in goal, maybe we wouldn't have been perhaps in the situation we're in. But we still weren't playing like this. We weren't playing this sort of football. Who'd have thought that Taiwo, who basically was our saviour, would be like, yeah, I mean, he's good, but maybe we need to replace him. It's insane. And none of us really thought that Chris Wood was going to, I think, turn out to be as prolific as he's been. So Nuno's ability to get the very best out of people is a real gift.
Normally, when we speak, you're in your flat or your house in London. People who are watching on YouTube will notice that you're in a hotel. Well, they won't know that, but you're on tour. So did you get to watch the City game all, or just highlights, or what?
I watched it live on telly.
Yeah.
I was doing my radio show on Absolute on Saturdays, which I love doing, but because it's on a Saturday 2 till 5, really it means I can't get to most games, but we do watch a lot of them. So myself and my co-host Matt Dyson, who's also from Nottingham and is a massive Forest fan, we we were on air when Hudson-Odoi scored, and there's this sort of primal scream that I don't even remember making. Just it's a horrible sound that people were subjected to. So I got to see it. But yes, I'm currently in the premiere in Aberdeen, where I was on tour in Aberdeen last night, and then I'm heading to Glasgow later today. And what's really cool, I get a lot of Forest fans. Obviously, we've got Forest all over the world, so I get Forest fans at every show. And I've just added another date in Nottingham, so I'm doing the Nottingham Playhouse on the 5th of June, which is very exciting. That'll be the biggest venue I've played on tour. So I am thrilled because I've done a couple of nights at the Lakeside in Nottingham, not the darts place. So the Playhouse is, that is a real treat, something I'm very excited about.
I want to come back to touring and questions about comedy. We always go off on tangents on this.
So that's fine by me. Yeah, I'll talk anyway.
We'll come back to that, certainly. On that City game, I mean, was that like the prime Nuno performance where we were so good defensively and then just that spark in attack? That was everything that we kind of Nuno dreams of about when he plans a game out.
It seems so. And I think there's so many, obviously the pass from Gibbs-White is sensational. And it's such a treat to, even when we're in League One, everyone would have had their favourite players. But to be treated at Forest, when we first came up, I thought, my God, we're going to see the best players in the world come and play at the City Ground. And I was excited about seeing Foden and Haaland and Salah. Gibbs-White is one of the most exciting players in the league. And you're like, he plays for us. What a treat that we get to see him week in, week out of the City Ground. And his footballing brain, he can see where the chess pieces are moving. And the physical ability to deliver that pass absolutely with precision to Hudson-Odoi. You think, oh my God, that is what you go to football matches for. And on the telly, it looked amazing. But I know that when you're in the stadium and you get that full view of the pitch and you can see what's going to happen, I don't think there's anything as entertaining you can go and see. I just think those moments. So Nuno's got the system, but you need the players to be able to deliver it. And the talent we've got, you just think, man. And now I already get anxious thinking, well, he's not going to be at Forest forever. I'm already mourning his loss, and he's still here.
That pass, actually, I was at the game and I couldn't see it. And maybe it's where my view was, but I didn't see Callum Hudson-Odoi, and he was in 30 yards of space, and Morgan can. So that's what fair play to him. You referenced there about seeing the best players in the world. I mean, we should see that next season in some form of European football, but is it going to be Champions League? Are you super confident or not?
Obviously, there's always a bit of doubt. And also, I think just at the back of our minds, there's always that thing of like, we almost went down the last 2 years. So what on earth is happening? And at some point, does gravity somehow grab at our boots and drag us back down to earth? But then you think, well, the way we're playing, the players we've got, and then the problem is, obviously, like everyone, I Google Forest, God knows how many times a day, to see what the latest news is and what are the latest items of clothing they've got in the club shop and what's on sale. And I click on the new in and sale tabs on the Forest club shop, probably more than any other website that I go on. So you see all the analysis, and then this whole thing about our players have played more minutes than any other team, and, we get less injuries. And then you start to think, oh, well, if we get an injury, and then you think, well, I trust Nuno and I trust players that would come into those positions to be able to see games out and get results. I think we've got more, so many times you're almost reliant on one player, or you feel like you are. Whereas with ours, you're like, oh my God, Alanga, Murillo, Sells, Gibbs-White, Hudson-Odoi, Wood. You just like, oh my God. And that's before Yates and the job he does. You just like Milenkovic. I don't think there's a player in our starting 11 that isn't a god. So that gives me so much confidence, and getting those results, beating City, beating Liverpool, you're like, man, why wouldn't we finish third or second? Obviously, everyone else is catching us, but they've dropped points at often the similar times that we have, and we are ahead of them for a reason. So I think I am confident. But I'm nervous about being confident, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. I mean, I think the thing maybe where we're slightly different to other teams with Nuno is we're not. We said this on Monday. We're not wedded to playing one way. So okay, maybe we've got a weakness alongside Anderson in terms of nailing down that spot. Okay, well, we'll play 3 in midfield instead of 2, and I mean, United nowhere near us, but Amorim wouldn't do that. Arteta wouldn't do that. They just play the same formation, the same tactics all the time. So I think that's probably the difference. I would say certainly. Have you seen this photo that's doing the rounds? Have you seen that one? You must have done on Twitter.
Oh man, it's so good. And I'm not even sure it was taken to make that point.
No, I don't think it was.
It's just taken, they've got a good view of the pitch and it's an interesting photo, but it's so good. And even, do you know what I love about it? The body language in the photo. So it's not just that Ryan Yates on the left is a lad from Lincoln who's playing for, his boyhood club, and the two fellas on the right are worth £1 billion or whatever. Yates, hand on hips, pelvis thrust forward, closer to the pitch. Those two don't look that keen to come on, actually. It's the difference in, not only is it the balance of investment on one side to the other, it's how engaged in the game he is, how keen to come on, the confidence in that stance compared to those two stood there. They look like they're about to enter the Colosseum, those two. They don't look keen on it. I love it. I mean, I love Yates. I talk about him every time I'm on here, but I think you need in every squad someone like that, a Stuart Pearce, a Ryan Yates, someone who gives you something that's something beyond just being good at football, something emotional. And obviously, if you're not good at football, then you're not going to get in the team. But you need both, and he's got them both. I love him.
Another thing we say on Monday is we're building up this list of incredible wins at the City ground, great moments. I'm sure you could think of 4 or 5 off the top of your head. Where would that game against City rank? Maybe it's distorted by if you were at the games, at these games or not. But where would you rank that one?
I do think, and it pains me to say, not been there, but I think that is the most important win so far of the season. I think coming when it did, I think we all looked at Arsenal and City at home and thought, is this the point actually where we start to drop off a bit? To get 4 points out of those 2 games, and it looked like it was going the similar way to the Arsenal game. You thought, well, this is just going to end in a draw, and then you think, well, we're at home, we're above them in the league. I know it's Man City with De Bruyne and Hon, all that. Actually, I really think we should nick this, and finding that ability to do that makes it so important to get 3 points in that weekend when it's getting tighter around us. And just what the message that sends. I mean, I went to the Brighton game a few weeks ago, and that was an incredible thing to be at. To be at a 7-0 in the Premier League against a team that aren't rubbish. It wasn't like it was against Leicester. That was mind-blowing. It was carnage. But I still think that City win is a statement win at a crucial time.
And handling pressure is such a big thing, isn't it? I mean, trying to relate it to yourself. If you're going on the stage of the Apollo, you can't be like falling apart and spitting your water out as you drink it there, can you? You've got to be able to handle it. And the fact we can do it, it felt like a big box ticked as well, didn't it?
I definitely think it's different for... Obviously, players will get more nervous for like a cup final or a playoff final or a game like that than they would other games. So I no doubt they feel pressure in different ways at different times. But I think sometimes, almost always, the fans are more nervous than the players. The players have drilled the stuff. They're good at it. They've got a plan. They've got the ability. You need such a level of like self-belief, I think, to be an elite athlete anyway. So, but obviously they're human beings. So I'm not saying that doubt doesn't creep in. And I think sometimes with comedy, when friends and family will come and see you. So I did the Royal Variety a few months ago at the Royal Albert Hall, and I'd done it about 10 years ago. And about 10 years ago, it was fine. I was a little bit nervous, but it was fine. This time, I was way less nervous. In fact, I almost didn't feel any nerves at all because I just thought, I know what I'm doing. Also, I think, without making it too morbid, what happened to me a year and a half ago when I got cancer and thought that was going to be the end of me? That puts everything into context, right? I just thought I had my spine carved out and removed a few months ago. I wobbled out onto the stage at the Royal Albert Hall with a walking stick. I just thought, this is not the worst thing that's ever going to happen to me. And even if it goes spectacularly badly, I really don't care because I've been I've experienced the worst thing I think I will experience in my life, and I'm over that now. And that has sort of given me a huge inner peace about pressure and nerves. I still get a little tingle of adrenaline, but I just think, I know what I'm doing. Why would I be nervous about it? Enjoy it. And then I think you go out there, and I think that helps you have a better time. I think that as long as you do the work, you should go into those big occasions relishing them, actually thinking this is a moment that I'm really going to enjoy. And I think footballers go out into big games like that and think we're going to do them today. I guarantee you, Gibbs White, Hudson-Odoi, players like that are like, let me get at them. Let me go to Liverpool and score. And I just think they relish playing in the way that they did.
I want to pull on that comedy thread a little bit more. You're pulling my notes and running order. You're hitting fast forward on them, or times 30 on Sky or whatever. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Right. Just before we continue talking about this season with Forest, a word or an ad for the Trent Navigation. Hopefully, Matt can enjoy this. If he hasn't seen it before, right? Strap yourself in. Here we go.
Hey up me duckies, a quick rundown of match days at the Big Shed. We're open from 10, serving full English breakfast, teas, coffees and, believe it or not, beers. Father's Footy Quiz is followed by the lunchtime kickoffs, and the outdoor kitchen is fired up from midday, serving sourdough pizzas, burgers, hot dogs, pies and sausage rolls. Lovely. Pints start at £4. We have a great selection of cask ales and lagers to lubricate the vocal cords for a bit of a sing-song before the game. After the match, we've got some great DJs and live bands booked. So get your send down to the Trent Nav. Win or lose, we're having a booze. And if we draw, we'll have some more.
Their social media is sensational. Like, they have... Not only have they created something fantastic, where they've created like an identity around a pub that had been there a very long time. They've like given it this new lease of life. That's become an extension of the ground, really, the Big Shed. That he's so funny, man. That advert. And I tell you what, the pies look great.
They are. I had one before our last live show. New live show coming soon. I really need to finalise the dates for that. Start of April, so about a month away. Yeah. They'll be on to you for voicing one of those soon, I can imagine.
I'm more than happy to support the Big Shed. Man, I'm jealous of people who have season tickets. I'm jealous of people who get to go to the Big Shed or the Trent Nav on the regular. I'm just like, man, I just want to sit in that pub all day. I want to drink. I think they had Bass on tap there. 10 pints of Bass, 10 cobs, a pie. Go home to have the best sleep you've ever had.
I think that's basically what Greg was on last night. I think that's what he did. I think he got home at 6:30 and thought it was midnight, I think was what he said. So yeah.
It's so good when that happens though. Because you basically one time, you're like, what? Well, I've basically extended my life by 6 hours. People have paid billions of quid for that. Greg's managed it by getting wasted.
Yeah, just on pints of Madrid, I think it would be for him, not Bass. Yeah,
the authentic taste of Madrid.
Brewed in Burton. Right. Back to the Forest. Did you go to the games against Bayern Munich and Lyon and things like that in the 90s? Were you there or not?
I went to the home games of Lyon and Man United. I do remember not going to the Malmo game. I don't know why. Do you know what? I think we probably couldn't afford on top of the season ticket to go to like cup games. And then I think my mum felt sorry for me. So then I went to the Bradford game in the cup, and I think we might have lost. It was just like, oh, this instead of Malmo. You know, that sort of still lingers with me a little bit. But I went to Lyon at home when obviously Paul McGregor scored, and Bayern Munich at home, which was Bayern Munich at home. I took my scarf, my Forest scarf, wanted to swap it with a Bayern Munich fan. But I didn't get to the ground until just before kickoff. And I really wanted to get some autographs because I collected autographs back then. And I managed to get Jean-Pierre Papin, but I really wanted Klinsmann. I couldn't get near him. And then the Bayern Munich mascot was a young lad with cerebral palsy. And this was like a cold March night in Nottingham. He was sat near us in the junior reds with his dad, and he was freezing. And I gave him my scarf, just as like it was a goodwill gesture. And at half time, the dad comes over to me and he says, can I get your name and address, and can you let me know when your birthday is? And I'm never forgetting this guy's name. His name was Brian Collinson. So anyway, I forget about it. It's in March. My birthday's in November. A week before my birthday, a package arrives. It's a biography of Jürgen Klinsmann by Hans Blickendorfer, and inside 2 signed photos of Jürgen Klinsmann.
Oh, wow.
So almost, half a year later, I finally got his autograph. I was like, man, what a lovely little treat. Delayed.
Yeah. Do a nice thing, get a nice thing back. There you go.
Exactly.
Very
That's
good.
why you should do nice things. Do nice things to be selfish, so then you can get treats. But they were amazing. I mean, even though we lost to Bayern Munich, you were like watching Mateus, Klinsmann, Papan. You're like, these are like, they're just on a different level. It was almost not a pleasure to lose because obviously you wanted to win, but once they had scored a couple, you thought, well, there's no way we're getting into this. So let's just enjoy watching these Adonises play football.
And now I suppose the point I was making is like a new generation of younger fans or the older fans who saw, Malmo and Madrid and, doing that. And then the people in the middle kind of missed out on a bit of all of it. So everyone's going to be able to, don't get ahead of myself, but, to have Champions League football or Europa League football at the City Ground again, it's going to be massive just for the club, the city. It's going to mean so much, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if it's Champions League, obviously we've not had that for over 40 years. So, I mean, even just thinking of owning a Forest shirt with the Champions League logo on the sleeve, the fact that you could get that in the Forest shop and that there'll be a different font on the back, you're like, man, I cannot wait to get a Forest shirt. Obviously, if we get in, which I think we will, with the Champions League thing on it, you're like, these are just the Champions League anthem, Zadok the Priest before kickoff. You're like, Christ. And also, in a way, it will feel more mad because obviously what Clough did was an absolute miracle. But the gap now between the Premier League and the Championship is so vast that for Forest to so soon after coming up to be able to compete in a tournament, and given the format of the tournament, you're like, well, we're going to be getting Real Madrid, Barcelona, PSG or whatever. It's just, and also then, and this is where you go mad with it, you think, I think we'll have them. I think we'll do PSG at home. Do you know what I mean? I'm already fantasizing, not just about playing against these people, but stuffing them. But I guess that's just the fevered brain of a football fan.
So if we do get there, obviously, we love Clough, we love Cooper, we love Frank Clark. Frank Clark took this team into Europe. Would Nuno be in the conversation in that the second tier below Clough for you or not? Is that too early?
Oh, I think if he gets us into the Champions League, he is then number 2, no question. I think that's just such a sensational achievement. And obviously, what Frank Clark was fantastic, and like getting us up, getting us into the quarterfinals. So like his place is safe. But I think getting us into the Champions League in the era that we're in. I mean, before we had Psycho playing for us. He'd been playing for us in the Championship and was still in the England team. I mean, things were very different then in terms of even then the gap between the Premier League and the Championship wasn't as pronounced. Now it's a chasm. It's just the gap between the top of the Premier League and mid-table is huge. So I think Nuno, if he gets us into the Champions League, becomes the second greatest Forest manager of all time. And also, you kind of think, well, this is just the start. We might win the FA Cup this year. I mean, it's just, and then what happens next year? You're like, this is just this year. This was the year that we all thought, well, maybe we'll get mid-table this year. And it potentially ends in Champions League and some silverware or a cup final or a semi-final. You're like, well, that would be incredible. They're the seasons that you look back on, late 80s or whatever, going, oh man, we were third in the league with this, that, and the other. And it feels like it's all come a bit quick.
I was just to reference a couple of things quickly while Matt was on there thinking. Stuart Pearce did an interview on TalkSport yesterday, and he sounded in good spirits. So that was really good because you saw that news and you think
so
the worst,
relieved.
don't you?
Yeah, because he came to visit me a lot when I was in hospital, and was such an amazing person to have there. And he would come these weren't fleeting visits. You know, he'd come and he would sit at my bedside for a long time, and we'd talk about life and music and a bit of football, obviously. And he's a really wise, philosophical man, and he has a lot of depth. So then to hear that he'd had this heart thing on a plane, you just think, oh my God. So I messaged him when I heard, and I teased him a bit because I think people will be aware, Stuart Pearce has a very strong stomach for humour. So, he would take the piss out of me when I was in hospital. So I did slightly take my revenge, but in a very respectful and obviously humanitarian way. But it was seeing that clip of him on TalkSport yesterday, where you could actually see him talking. You think, oh man, he looks fit and well. It was such a relief.
Yeah, massively. The other thing about the progress we're making, I think the ground development is penciled in to start either during next season or at the end of next season. So that's another exciting time as well. Do you think, I've asked a few people this, is this the start of a new era? Is it a one-off season? Are we getting, again, we're getting ahead of ourselves and daring to dream a bit. Are you looking ahead that far or not?
I'm always dreaming about the future. Just always thinking, what if? And obviously, this is one of the seasons we did dream of, which is why it's so euphoric. But certainly redeveloping the ground, which hasn't been done in a very long time, bringing in all the things that symbolises in terms of modernity and progress and more capacity and more money and all that sort of thing. That is all massive. Hopefully, it will have the best disabled toilets on the planet, and hot water and all the other things that you need in a modern football stadium. But yeah, you think, well, if this is just, it feels like we're a little bit ahead of schedule. And obviously every other club is planning to do these things as well, to finish in the positions that we're finishing in. So it's not like everyone else is standing still. But you think the recruitment is really good. The investment obviously is there. I still think, even with a redeveloped stadium, the atmosphere in that place is unlike anything else in English football. And obviously, if we start to do better, a global fan base, that has implications for revenue and other things you can do abroad. I think this owner clearly has very, very big plans, and we are now living them in a way that is very exciting. So you think, I mean, I can't believe that we would challenge to win the league anytime soon. But you're like, if someone said in 5 years' time, could you see Forest challenging for the Premier League? Absolutely, yes. Which means we'll probably win it in 3.
Hopefully so. I think I'm still in the mindset of just like being a competitive Premier League club. It is crazy. I think I need to readjust my ambitions around the owners a bit more. Because he's like all gas, no brakes, I think is a phrase, isn't it? It's like there's no stopping it.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, you just hope you don't meet a wall with that sort of strategy. But I love it. I think, why muck about? This is his money. Why try and do some sort of incremental tinkering? Like, get on with it. Why can't we be a bit impatient about doing it? So, we're now in a position where if UEFA wanted to try that European Super League again, we would absolutely be in it. And Man United and Spurs wouldn't. And that is justice.
Yeah, although I still say tell them where to go. But yeah.
Oh, absolutely. To be clear, I'm not in favour of a European Super League. But now we are officially a big top 4 club and would be in that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, look at us to look at where Man United are. I mean, I know there's absolute nonsense about them going bankrupt at Christmas and they're announcing a new ground the next day and saying they lost 400 million quid, which would seriously breach PSR. That's a whole other conversation. I mean,
it's so funny to say we're on the brink of bankruptcy. We are a club in crisis like we've never experienced. Could you lend me £2 billion, please? Yeah. It doesn't seem very. I don't think the banks are going to be generous with the repayment terms, given that.
He'll probably ask the government again, won't he? That's what he tried last time. Radcliffe, yeah.
These sorts of people always try that. They always think, we've got to try and get the money from somewhere and try and get it through some regeneration. Dosh.
Yeah. Last football topic before I want to pick Matt's brain about touring. England squad announcement is either today or tomorrow. How many Forest players are going to be in it?
Oh, man. Well, Gibbs White's got to be in there. So then it's whether Hudson-Odoi, Yates,
Elliot Anderson.
And man, and what a footballer! And do you know what? Being at that Brighton game, and this is why when you can't get to the games, you know you're missing out on so much. Mainly the atmosphere and the experience, but he is an exceptional footballer. His control of a football and the way his body moves and his vision, his ability to go round players, you're like, he is a genius. And yet, when you saw the highlights on Match of the Day, they didn't show you anything that Anderson had done. You think, man. Actually, the 7-0, watching Anderson was one of the most satisfying things I got out of that game. You just think he is phenomenal. Obviously, it's about him being able to do the job, the specifics of the job that he's required to do by the manager at any one time. But, I mean, I think with Anderson, you think, well, if he's not in the full squad, he'll be in the under-21s.
Yeah.
I'd love to see him. I mean, I think Gibbs White has to be in it. So hopefully 3, maybe 4. Yates, Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs White, Anderson.
That's the dream. That's the dream.
Yeah.
I think Gibbs White's nailed on. And yeah, I mean, I love Anderson. Like, he's the modern midfielder, because you could give Anderson the ball, against the corner flag and he'll play out of it. So yeah, unbelievable talent. Yeah. And Hudson-Odoi as well. It's crazy seeing like all these amazing goals that Hudson-Odoi scored. When you think about it, he scored against Liverpool, against City, against Chelsea. He's a proper big game player. It's fantastic to have that confidence in our players. When we first got promoted, it was like, oh, we're going to retreat. We're going to pass it across the back. We're going to pass it back to Dean Henderson. We're going to lose it, and we're going to defend for 80 minutes. And this is just a different world. So yeah, mental.
And they're such likable people. Ola Aina's social media is such a great insight into their personalities and their characters. And you see like Elanga, and they all seem so funny. And Ola Aina teasing Callum Hudson-Odoi about his clothes. It's one of the funniest things you can watch. He's relentless. The stuff that Callum Hudson-Odoi has to suffer. I don't know if you've seen any of the videos.
Yeah. The fashion stuff that they do.
He's
as
a
well,
Dior bandit. Come on. I can't get enough of Ola Aina. I just want to watch him all day, which thanks to social media I can.
Yeah, and they're likable. Yeah, they're clever as well. I think there's always this perception around footballers they're thick, but actually, when you see them being interviewed and see them, the way they understand the game, Elanga speaks like 5 languages. Is just nuts. Yeah. Love it. Love having them on board. It's great. It's great. Right. Quick word for our second sponsors of this show, and then we shall talk a bit more about touring. Thank you very much to Vesta Blinds for sponsoring this. If you're in the East Midlands anywhere, but particularly around Notts, and you're looking for made-to-measure bespoke blinds or curtains, then get in blinds or shutters, then get in touch with them. Link is in the description. It's vestablinds.com. You can see the phone number on screen, or it's info@vestablinds.com. If you want to make any more purchases or inquiries, get in touch with them. You probably can't remember where you live. You've been around for touring for so long. Are we having shutters, blinds, or curtains at Casa de Forde?
I've got blinds at home. I don't think I've got any curtains actually. It's all blinds. I'd never thought about this.
There you
I prefer them. Curtains are very cumbersome things, and they get dusty, and you're like trying to unpick every hoop to wash them. You're like, it's not an easy thing. A blind you can just wipe. And I like the Venetian blinds, like the ones that Vesta Blinds do. That you think there's something. There's like modern white ones that you get in like sort of London townhouses. You think, oh, they look really cool. Whereas curtains, you're like, they go out of fashion fast. They weigh a ton. They're a trap for flies and cobwebs. I'm Team Vesta Blinds.
Yes, I know.
So yeah,
I've got blinds. Matt's a professional podcaster because he does better adverts than I do for companies that don't sponsor him. So yeah.
Oh no, I don't know why I'm plugging them. I'm not getting any kickback. There's no back end.
Well, there might be after that. Right. You mentioned your tour, and I shall remind people of when it is. You've added some extra dates. When's the Nottingham one again?
Nottingham is 5th of June. Salford Lowry, 13th of April. Chipping Norton, Leeds on the 4th of June. There's some others as well. I mean, I guess people all over the country listen to this, don't they? It's not just Nottingham, but
all over the world.
Forest all over the world. Forest Focus all over the world. So yes, there's some extra ones that I've added. The tour was meant to have finished last night, and then it keeps getting kicked on, which is obviously lovely. But I mean, I feel like, it's like when they talk about players having to play extra games. The further you go into tournaments, I'm getting a bit tired now. I'm going to become injury prone. I think my vocal cords are getting a bit tired. But yes, Leeds 4th of June, Nottingham 5th, Salford 13th of April, London 4th of April. But mattforde.com will have for all your ticketing needs.
Is the post? Is this a Taylor Swift thing? So you look like an evangelical preacher who could be telling us Trump was sent from God in the
It
photo
does a bit.
there.
Do you know what? I hadn't thought that. Yeah, it's the end of an era tour, and the poster is a rip-off of, and is indeed the title of a Taylor Swift of the Eras tour.
Yeah,
I hadn't. My God, you're right. I look like one of those corny American preachers, even the way I'm holding the mic. But I was trying to mimic Taylor Swift. She's sort of turning on her poster. Yeah, maybe that does. Although I quite like that.
no, it's good.
So yes, whether you like evangelical preachers, Taylor Swift, or none of those things, this is the show for you. But obviously, I'm updating it a lot with everything that's happening.
Oh God, yeah, I bet you are. I bet that's a different conversation. Right, comedy. I want to pick your brains a little bit about it. When you, maybe it's the same now. When you were coming up, I don't know. Were there particular comics that you admired? And if you're in the presence of them now, especially if you're on a panel show, I don't know if you do many panel shows, you think, oh God, this guy's going to absolutely, or girl is going to absolutely eat me up. Any intimidation, that kind of stuff.
I think it is similar to football, where the ones that you grew up watching are the ones that you were into as a kid are always in a different place in your mind and heart than the ones that, even though I idolize them now, you're like, when it's your generation, obviously you came up with a lot of them, so you know them. They're your colleagues or your friends, and obviously some have huge amounts of success, some moderate, some have none. But you kind of, you all know each other. Whereas when it's the ones that you grew up watching on telly, when telly feels like a different world, even British telly, like that might as well be in America. That's so far from my life that it feels absolutely intangible. So people like Frank Skinner, Jack D. So then when you meet those people, you're like, oh my God. It's like meeting Stuart Pearce or Colin Moore. You're like, oh my God, I watched them as a child. Thankfully, the vast majority of people are absolutely lovely. Some people are slightly more, in like a panel show. I mean, I did Mock the Week a couple of times. I just find those things, that is not how comedy's meant to be done. The rest of the year, you are absolutely autonomous. You are in control of your bit. And if you end up in the privileged position of being able to tour, I write that show. I perform it. It's only me. Like, that's, people are like coming to see the thing that I've created. On a panel show, you're one of, it feels like 1,000 tadpoles all sort of wriggling around in the pond trying to get seen. And you're like, it goes on for ages. And it feels so weird. I mean, a lot of the time you're not even looking at the audience. You're having to turn your chair to look at whoever's talking. It's just not the way comedy should be done. So they are quite odd experiences a lot of the time, but stand-up is, and other forms of comedy telly are far more enjoyable and conducive towards the thing that you hone your skill as someone who just like looks forward, addresses the audience at all times, and does your jokes, rather than someone who's trying to crowbar those jokes into a discussion about something else. And you can see it when you watch it. You're like, what? It feels so weird. But I don't think anyone's ever been really horrible to me. I mean, you meet people who are less pleasant, as you do in all workplaces. It tends to be the ones who make out that they're really nice people. So the ones that have a kind of often a public image of being really nicey, they're often, the ones who preach a bit. They're sometimes the ones that turn out to be less nice in the flesh. But I think that's true in politics. I'm sure it's true in journalism, and it's true in comedy.
Yeah, I've heard Rob Beckett and Josh Widdicombe say how awful Mock the Week was, basically, and how they basically put them on the brink of nervous breakdowns, and yeah, certainly things like that I can remember.
It's not nice because everyone else is just trying to get in. So you're like, what the fuck is going? It's like being at it's like standing in the middle of like a 10 junction crossroads. You just like, you don't know when to speak, move. I mean, there's that awful round where you have to like barge people out of the way to walk to the mic. You're like, why are we doing it like this? Who thought this needs a gladiatorial element? Do you know what?
Yeah.
Let's get them to sort of basically fight. You don't need that. That's not good. That's horrible, because then the nerves go through the ceiling, and you just think, oh, you don't need that. So I actually found doing the royal variety at the Royal Albert Hall in front of the King less nerve-wracking than doing Mock the Week.
Yeah. And when you
Way
watch
less nerve-wracking.
when you watch 8 out of 10 Casters Countdown, I mean, obviously poor Sean Locke's no longer with us, but I can't imagine like your mate John Richardson trying to jockey for laps with Sean Locke. I mean, yeah, terrifying, I think, for me.
Oh, well, Sean Locke was a genius, and it was such quite unusual, really, in the modern era. I guess when he was coming up, there would have been other people like this, but he was a real man. You're like, he was a sort of tall, broad alpha male. You're like, oh my God, that's like a fully grown bloke over there. Do you know what I mean? And then you're all there in your 20s in your polo shirts, and you're like, that guy's a fucking bloke. Do you know what I mean? It's just, and his talent was insane. So it was him and John are very different characters and very different comedians, and that's why it worked. I think, you got Sean Locke's incredible surreal genius rubbing up against John's pedantic, slightly beta male, but intellectually very sharp character. I thought they worked so well together. It was great.
Yeah, Carrot in the Box is one of the funniest things you'll ever see because of that.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But also it's really funny, but it's also, you feel like it's telling us something about game theory, and you're like, oh my God, this is so clever about like how the odds change depending on your perspective on this. I just think it's amazing. But John on those panel shows, as you would imagine, is never sharp elbowed. I worked on 8 out of 10 Cats as a writer for many years for John, and I would watch him, when Jimmy Carr would throw something over to his team. Usually the team captain is the first person to speak. He'd always let, the newest person go first. He was very encouraging of new people. Yeah, so he was, as you would imagine, at high ethical standards to go with his vicious, pedantic, northern ways.
People should look up, if you don't know what Carrot in a Box is, look it up on social media or YouTube. It's brilliant. Look it up. There's a couple more questions before I let you go, and I'm going to link this. There is a long wind up to a question around comedy and life coming. I might have to edit this. Do you know Bob Mortimer?
I don't. I'm afraid. I wish I did know Bob Mortimer. I would love to meet him. I met Paul Whitehouse a couple of times, and he's absolutely lovely. In fact, there was one day when, in the building where they write out of 8 out of 10 Cats, there was me, John Richardson, and Kevin Day, who is a great comedian, a big Palace fan. He does lots of football stuff. And me and Kevin would write for John. So I'd be in there a couple of days a week, and it's this big glass office. And I mean, this is a while ago now, maybe 15 years. Paul Whitehouse and Harry Enfield are walking past. And they must know Kevin because they wave, and then they come in and they're aware of John. And it's like, fucking hell, Harry Enfield and Paul Whitehouse have just come in. He's like, oh, this is Matt. I was like, hello. He's like, fucking Enfield and what? It's like Lennon and McCartney turning up. He's like, oh, hello. And then we'd always have the papers out on the table. Me and John were talking about this. I'd forgotten this element of it. I said, do you remember when Whitehouse and Enfield turned up? So we had the tabloids out because you're flicking through them trying to find silly angles on stories. But it was like, it's the Sun, the Star, it's Red Tops. And they saw that John had been reading the Sun. Oh, reading the Sun, you dirty old man, you dirty old git. Oh, you filthy git, you filthy fucker. It's just like both teamed up on him as those characters. I was like, man, what a moment. So, no, I don't know Paul. I don't know Bob Mortimer, but the closest I've got is meeting Paul Whitehouse.
So you've linked into the next part of the question. Do you watch Gone Fishing with Paul Whitehouse and Bob Mortimer? Unbelievable TV show. One of the best TV shows around, isn't it? For people who don't know it, they obviously they go fishing, but the best part is they talk about life in a funny way, but grief, aging, mortality, everything. There's no, but it's such a great show, isn't it? It's
so special, and I'm allergic to fish, and I love it. The fishing element is not part of it. It's what it is all those things you said. Plus, I think it's such the way it's shot, because they go into all these beautiful lakes and rivers around the UK. There's something so peaceful and calm it's such serene viewing. I find it really soothing. At the end of a long day, to watch something like that. Like, it's beautifully shot. And then you've got these two really funny people. So it's funny, it's well shot, and there's that tender element to it. And I think it's a really special bit of telly. John and I have spoken about, because we've always had ideas similar to that, but not that. Obviously, we're younger and it would have a different tone. But I think those sorts of shows are really. I sort of want to see more shows like that. I think they're really good to make.
Yeah, quite important as well, I think, to talk about stuff like that without it being overtly in your face as well. I think there's a value to it.
Oh, definitely. And seeing like funny people talk about death or grief or whatever it is, health problems, is good. But also, you're like, man, this country is beautiful. I mean, I live in London. It's cool, but it's concrete. And then you get to see all these other parts. You think, man, I'm missing out. It really makes you want to get out into nature. And there is a vicarious element to it where you think, even just sat at home, you feel like you've had you've sort of, even though it's through your telly and you live in a concrete jungle, you have somehow captured something of nature through watching it. So you think, oh man, maybe that's why I like football, because it's just on a big field.
You've
It's
led
the only
in,
bit of grass I ever see. Yeah.
You've led in. This has been like a 10-minute wind up to this question. That show, it came about because they both had heart problems, especially Bob Mortimer. When I was reading about it, he had this huge operation and became slightly reclusive, and Paul Mortimer got him out through fishing. So I guess they kind of had a new outlook on life. And the question I'm leading up to is, obviously, you've had your huge issues. Do you have a new outlook on life? And can you appreciate and take a step back like they do when you're touring around the country, or is touring part of that appreciation of life because it holds so much value to you?
Yeah. The main thing I think is, if you think you get told you got cancer, particularly if you're youngish, as I am, you really are thinking that you're dead. You really have to kind of come to terms. You really have to think, I might not have long left, and you have to try and come to terms with that as swiftly as possible. And your brain is sort of getting you there. You don't really have a choice in it. You're sort of rapidly processing how you would feel if they said you had a year or a month or a week. So then on the other side of that, when that's not the case, where it looks like, well, one, I have lived, but that hopefully my life expectancy isn't really affected by it. That is such an amazing thing to have gone through. And I've always been an optimist anyway, and I've always loved life. What I have now is anything else that I ever thought, I still feel pressure, and there are still things that are more, relatively more nerve-wracking than others. And if I'm working a lot and I'm having to write a lot of material, I put a lot of pressure on myself for things to be good. If people have paid to come and see you and they've got a babysitter, I know what it's like when I've bought a ticket for something. I'm so excited that if you ever go to something and it's slightly underwhelming, you think, oh, what fucking wait, and you try and kid yourself and go, well, I liked some of it. I never want people to leave feeling that. I'm like, this has to be excellent every time. So I still put that pressure on me, but I always operated, I think, with a certain level of fear that, well, if something didn't go well, then that was it. It was all over. My career's over. I might as well walk away because the word will get out that I'm shit and no one's ever going to come and see me ever again. I don't think like that now. I think I have really had to confront the fact that I might have not had long left at one point. I've had to go through very painful surgery, changes to my body, and come to terms with those. I'm going to do my best at this. I'm going to work just as hard as I did before. If for whatever reason that is not the best show I've ever done, it's not the end of the world. And I think that is it's almost like a weight has lifted off me. And it's slightly unblocked my mind. In a way, I'm not sure this will last forever, but certainly in the years since I've got discharged, I've found writing comedy so much easier. I find like I get to the point faster, that even though I realize this is a long, sprawling answer, so I'm not living that truth right now, but I can sort of think of ideas. I feel like I can just I feel like it's just slightly unblocked my brain a bit. I don't think that'll necessarily last forever, but also, if you ever go through anything severe in your life, and it doesn't have to be a health scare, it can be a bereavement, a divorce, whatever it is, just a very difficult time, and whatever that is relative to your existence. After that, I definitely think you are stronger. The things that you can endure after that are increased. Like you things now that before then I would have found really worrying. Health things, pains. Now I'm just like, oh, well, that's just part of my body now, so I don't even think about it. It's stuff that would have driven me mad before is low down. Other stuff still drives me mad. People being rude, and obviously I don't live in the greatest city for that. If I'm expecting manners from everyone in London, I'm going to go mad. But I'm still like, why the fuck didn't you have to hold the door open for him? Why didn't you say thank you? Those things still kind of great. But I think the overall view of life and what is a bad time has completely changed. And I just think, as a result, being out back on tour is just such a great thrill. Every night that I'm on stage, I think, man, when I was in that hospital bed, I never was entirely sure I would do this again. It's so good to be doing it again, just as quite quickly, and also to have got material out of what has happened to me, out of having had cancer and the effect that it's had on my body. And I won't repeat the routines on here, but they're to do with pee and poo and other things. I've really enjoyed that challenge of getting comedy out of cancer and out of tragedy. It's not something I've ever mined for comedy before, so it's just great. You're like, what a privilege that I can get something creative out of that terrible experience. I feel so lucky. So yes, in short, I'm loving it.
Good. MattForde.com if you want to learn more about pee-poo and other things. And have a good laugh.
And Trump and Starmer and all that. There's loads of impressions in there as well.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Right. We shall end it there because Matt has got to catch a train to his next venue, I guess. So if you have enjoyed this, and I appreciate it, was, we went off piece about 15 minutes at the end there, but I do enjoy doing that. So yeah, as I say, if you've enjoyed this, do us a favor, hit like, hit subscribe, do consider membership or Patreon or just a lovely 5-star review on iTunes. We'll be back tomorrow with an Ipswich preview. We've got an opposition preview. We've got a bonus one with Forest women, Charlie Wellings, because they're playing Derby on Sunday, and then we'll have an Ipswich post-match show on Saturday. Matt Forde, thank you very much.
Matt, it's always a pleasure. This is such a great podcast, and when I'm away, especially when I can't get to games, I live through this podcast. It absolutely makes me feel more connected to Forest, to the Big Shed, and to my blinds.
We all need to feel connected to our blinds. There you go. Right. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good day. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.